When you watch Russian television, you hear a lot of interesting statements. For example, recently the Solovyov, the top Russian propagandist, he was openly calling on the Russian national television to invade Europe. He basically called for a full-scale invasion of European countries, strike London, strike Brussels, and other cities. But you see, somehow on their way to Berlin and Brussels and London, the mighty Russian army stumbled upon a tiny Ukrainian town of Pokrovsk. How did it happen? I have no idea.
Well, exactly. And it's being watched here in the West as well. Donald Trump has again threatened to send Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. Russia have responded, as you say, across their media outlets, but as well from the government spokespeople themselves, that they won't be able to tell if a Tomahawk launched by Ukraine was nuclear armed or not. The thing about this, though, is there's no evidence that Ukraine have developed their own nuclear weapons. No one is providing nuclear warheads to Ukraine, least of all for the Tomahawk missile. There is a game being played here by Moscow, isn't there, in the terms of the language they use on the world stage?
I agree on that. Peskov in that interview mentioned the dirty bomb, actually, and I think he was even smiling when he was saying that, because it's an old fake that they created, I believe, back in 2022. Even earlier, when I served in the National Guard, I heard this myth about the dirty bomb that Kiev is gonna drop on Donbass or something like that. And this myth was very, very popular. I think still is, so they just drag it from like a dropper time to time. But we can see some very interesting rhetorics again. The Russians are claiming, starting from Putin in Valdai, claiming that this weapon is not going to change anything on the front line in Ukraine. On the other hand, we can see how nervous they are, and basically this update, all those news, all those rumors about the Tomahawks coming to Ukraine are provoking enormous hysteria and anxiety among Russians, because all sorts of Russian spokesmen, including Medvedev, including basically everyone, they are talking about it. They threaten the civilized world with nuclear apocalypse. But again, they were saying the same in 2022. When HIMARS systems were coming to Ukraine, they were saying the same in 2023, 2024, when F-16s were delivered. And basically nothing changed much. One of the reasons, I might repeat myself, but one of the reasons why I don't see Russia striking Berlin, London, or Washington, D.C., specifically Miami, of course, is because they don't want to kill their own kids who live, study, work there. They don't want to kill, the wives of the Russian oligarchs who live there massively and enjoy life in a civilized country. So I don't see that happening.
And Trump has also had a phone call with Zelensky over the weekend about the idea of providing Tomahawk, reportedly. I mean, there is a much warmer relationship now between Zelensky and the White House than there was earlier this year, wasn't there? I mean, there's certainly a complicated relationship going on there, but there must be a more confident feeling among Ukrainians now that the US is sort of tacitly giving the green light for Ukraine to do these long-range strikes into Russia, something that even the previous administration under Biden had never given.
First of all, I completely agree on that. The relations, we can see that they're now much warmer, much friendlier, which is something that all Ukrainians anticipated, of course. And at the same time, we will be much more happier if we finally receive those missiles, the Tomahawks missiles, or at least enough Patriot missiles with enough numbers and proper permissions to use them against the Russian targets. I'm talking about the Tomahawks. Patriots, we know how to use. Because there are several problems that we still should understand how to solve. First of all, those missiles are not, let's say, their number is limited, and the United States don't produce thousands of those missiles. Ukraine needs hundreds of them, actually, in order to break Russia immediately and effectively. And if we are given not enough missiles, if we're given, let's say, 10, 20, that might introduce some changes, but very, very locally, and that would be point strikes. Ukraine needs much more reliable long-range weaponry that will deliver necessary blow to the Russian military industry, Russian oil industry, and only then this will bring some sort of results. Currently, there's half of the Russian oil refineries that are still functioning. And also, besides oil refineries, new targets emerged, such as Russian power facilities. Again, Russian power facilities power Russian industry that produces tanks and missiles, and I think they should be shut down as well. And not only because of that, but also because I think after almost 4 years of Russia's absolutely atrocious strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, I think we should also pay back, because we cannot just receive those strikes in the same gates and do nothing. I think it was a proper thing when President Zelensky said that we will be responding symmetrically to the Russian strikes on our energy infrastructure. I think it's a proper thing.
Yeah, and what we do know that has been supplied to Ukraine by the US is this further intelligence on energy infrastructure targets in Russia. The effect so far has been to take offline up to 40% of Russia's oil refinery capability. In this case, I mean, given that Ukraine has done that so far with its own weapons, is the intelligence provision that Trump has now supposedly given the green light to, is that more important than the armaments themselves?
It's as important. It's as important because there is absolutely no way you can use such sophisticated weaponry without proper intelligence. And of course, the Tomahawk missiles themselves, they are integrated naturally to work properly with the American intelligence provided by the American experts. So we absolutely need this intelligence. It's crucial. Even without the Tomahawks, it's still crucial, because you can see what sort of damage Ukraine managed to deliver to the terrorist federation without using Tomahawks, with using whatever Ukraine actually produced on its own territory, long-range drones and long-range missiles, flamingos. We use those extremely effectively, and also the naval drones, by the way, that also strike Russian naval oil terminals. Again, they're extremely, extremely effective. By the way, recently Russians showcased one of the captured Ukrainian drones, the naval drones that actually, besides enormous amount of explosives on board, it also carried FPV drones that were supposed to be launched from these drones. So Ukraine already, with those technologies that we have, we are able to deal to do this absolutely enormous damage to the Russian industry, but it's not enough, because again, Russia is big. Russia has a much bigger economy. Russia has a big industry, military industry, and of course, it has a lot of resources. Speaking like manpower that they can use, and we need much more weaponry to fight against it properly. Again, there are still targets that are temporarily out of reach. That Bashkortostan strike that took place, I believe, yesterday, it's 1,400 kilometers from Ukraine, but there are targets that are much further than that. And we should find ways to deal with them as well, because Russian industry can collapse, and we can do it actually easily. Having all that resource that United States have, U.S. Navy have, I'm talking about the long-range weapons, we can deal proper damage to Russia and actually force it to negotiate, and it will not take a lot of time, actually. Provided all the intel from the United States, but at this point we're fighting with what we have.
And just finally on Tomahawk itself, Russia has escalated its rhetoric around the possible deployment of this missile in this conflict. At the same time, we're seeing increasing incursions and sort of sub threshold drone attacks going on in Europe outside of Ukraine and Russia. Um, how do these two come together? I mean, it presumably is not a coincidence that we've seen this escalation in rhetoric and also potentially Russian action elsewhere in Europe as well.
I think they are related, of course, because Russia is waging its hybrid warfare, and they're finding new way to, first of all, scare the citizens of European Union, inflict fear and inconfidence and things like that. And of course, the ISW, for example, on 11th of October, published their new research regarding the possibility of Russia's full-scale invasion of Europe that might actually happen because Russia is currently stockpiling weaponry, even despite the fact that they're throwing all they can against Ukraine. But at the same time, they are refurbishing their T-72 tanks. They're trying to expand the production of T-90 tanks. And also, we can see their military bases growing, like base near the Estonian border. So we can see that Russia is preparing for something long term. And that hybrid warfare that we can see happening over Europe using those Russian drones, that is to me personally is a sign of preparation, because not only it brings psychological effect against the citizens of the European Union, but also they basically study the rules of engagement on the ground, how the law enforcement in different countries coordinates their actions with military, with air defense. So they study, they conduct intelligence, and this will be used in the future against Europeans. So, in my personal opinion, they are basically preparing. But again, their hybrid warfare, their psychological warfare is also very, very strong. We can see them trying to rattle their sabers with their submarines. All of a sudden, submerging somewhere near the French coast. We can see their green men on the Estonian border, again, all of a sudden emerging from the forest. So we will see that happening, and we will see, I believe, even more drones flying over European cities, because in Valdai, for example, Putin mentioned that those young people who launched drones over the airports, which didn't happen much previously. That's literally like locals, and basically what it tells me, it tells that Russia will be probably recruiting local people and telling them to launch those drones to disrupt air connectivity and things like that, and also collect intelligence, because all of those launches, they are not chaotic. They are very much systematic. They take place over strategic objects all across Europe, and they collect intelligence.
You've been watching or listening to Frontline for Times Radio with me, Louis Sykes. For more on the war in Ukraine, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and sign up for a membership, or you can hear all the latest news and analysis on Times Radio, or read it at thetimes.com. And remember, we are in both podcast and video form. You can find us on your favourite podcast platform. It's Times Radio's Frontline, or you can watch us on Times Radio's YouTube channel. Thanks very much. Goodbye.